Hi, welcome to the second webinar in a series of 4 about secure SD-WAN. This webinar is designed to provide deeper details on Versa and the integration with the checkpoint as part of a cohesive solution for your infrastructure. We'll be getting started in a minute just to allow a few more people to settle in. We know we're sensitive to your time. We're going to try to keep the webinar to 30 minutes plus a Q&A time afterwards. We will have all microphones muted during the webinar, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A icon to present your questions to the team. We'll address as many questions as we can. If we don't get to your specific question, we'll respond to them directly after the webinar. Of course, if you have a specific question about your environment, it'd probably be best to use some one-on-one time with us. Oftentimes, the specific environments are better answered personally anyway. We'll post all the questions and answers to an SD-WAN frequently asked questions page after the webinar is completed. In addition, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our webpage for later viewing. So let's get started. I'm excited to introduce multiple experts that we have on secure SD-WAN joining us today. From Versa Networks, our good friend Heman, again. Heman is the Vice President of Sales for Versa Worldwide. He loves to take the red eyes traveling to East so he can get some extra work done on the plane while all the rest of the passengers are snoring. The man actually never sleeps. In addition, we have Paul Warnegaris from the Teneo group. He has extensive knowledge on the cybersecurity in general and has been working with Checkpoint since 1997. He is familiar with all things Checkpoint, including endpoint, mobile, cloud, and data center. He has worked very closely with Versa and Checkpoint developers while integrating these two technologies and is passionate about the advances SD-WAN will bring to security. So now we'll be handing the controls over to Heman. Heman, when you're ready, go ahead and share your screen, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Craig, and I appreciate. I guess the mic on the fact that, yep, I am a man of red eyes and try to get as much done as possible. So good morning, good afternoon, folks. My name is Heman Mehta, and I am the Vice President at Versa Networks for sales. Today I'm going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to give you an understanding or recap on why SD-WAN and follow it up with why Versa and what are some of the differentiation that Versa has within our product set. If you want to move to the next slide. So basically we all know in today's environment that everybody is transforming, every enterprise is transforming, and the transformation is happening because of the fact that there is a lot of cloud and SaaS applications that are being accessed at the branch level. And the goal of the enterprise is to simplify the branch. And that's what the transformation is in progress. And most enterprises are in that mode right now. They have either evolved themselves from MPLS or to a hybrid MPLS environment with SD-WAN. And I would say across the marketplace, there is a tremendous amount of implementation that has already occurred. And there is no longer a question whether they should move to SD-WAN or not. But the question is when or how soon they can migrate over to SD-WAN. The transformation, obviously, we all know, just on the slide, right, is a challenge, right? Because we all know today there is a complexity at the branch, and what I mean by complexity at the branch is you have multiple appliances that do multiple functions at the branch, and I can start off by just naming a few. Routing, doing the routing, right? The routers doing the routing functionality, switch doing what the switch does. Then you have appliances that do WAN optimization, appliances that do application performance management, right? So there are several different appliances that actually are at the branch that do multiple functions, which then adds to the cost, at the branch. It obviously requires expertise, right, of different network architects and different architectures. And then all of this leads to sort of a lack of kind of agility, right? So on this slide, what this is speaking to is there is not enough bandwidth in the current everybody is complaining for bandwidth, right? I mean, everybody wants the maximum bandwidth as much as possible, and that's because from the branch itself, these applications are being accessed, whether it's the the SaaS application or whether it's the UCaaS or any of these applications that are accessed directly from the branch. They're fighting for that bandwidth, right? So SD-WAN basically allows to bring a lot of this in the single pane of glass, right? And one of the biggest thing that we have with SD-WAN is the ability to sort of provide management, control, visibility, analytics via a single pane of glass. Specifically for Versa, right? Versa actually does all of these functions in one single pane of glass, and irrespective of the transport service, whether it's an MPLS or broadband or LTE, Versa, or for that matter, any SD-WAN vendor will facilitate these SD-WAN functionality, right? Which could lead to dynamic path selection and optimization, secure internet access with checkpoint, being integrated, which Paul will talk about in a few minutes. The integration of checkpoint with Versa as the SD-WAN vendor. So the whole idea behind having Versa as your SD-WAN solution is that we are just not an SD-WAN sort of vendor, right? We actually do SD Edge, or basically replace the existing appliances that you have with one Versa appliance or one Versa stack of software, because we are a software company, and that's what gets loaded onto one single appliance. Can you move to the next slide? This is just a quick overview on sort of validation from the Magic Quadrant, which Gartner published in October of 2018. So Gartner, that was the first time they came out with the Magic Quadrant for the WAN Edge / SD-WAN, right? And Versa is in the quadrant where it puts us in a visionary quadrant. And the reason why you can see Silver Peak or Cisco or VMware up there is because Cisco acquired one of the SD-WAN company called Viptela. VMware acquired a company called VeloCloud, and those guys are in that leader quadrant specifically based on revenue, right? And the market, because obviously Cisco and VMware are now a combined entity, and they are a lot more bigger from a revenue standpoint. But with regards to from a WAN Edge standpoint, Versa was very well placed in the visionary sort of quadrant, right? And the reason for that is, I mean, as it states right there, I mean, again, the reason for that is because we do a lot of these packet stripping or packet duplication, all of that within Versa, right? And it brings a lot of this integration of SD-WAN and next-gen firewall integrated with checkpoint, and puts it in a single management interface, which really differentiates us between the competition. Next slide number 8. So all this slide shows you is basically our 3 different sort of areas that we play in, right, from a software standpoint. So we have a single pane of glass, a management plane that basically allows you to do monitoring, visibility, all the way from the public cloud or private cloud, right? And as I said, access is immaterial. We are transport independence, and it spans across small enterprises to medium enterprises to large enterprises. And again, we serve the gamut across the entire scope of a particular enterprise. We could very well function as a full-featured functionality from a routing standpoint. We definitely have integrated security with next-gen firewall and UTM integrated with Checkpoint, and then going into sort of the branch, which allows us to do LTE or managed Wi-Fi from the branch, should the customer have that kind of a requirement. This slide basically talks about our ability to sort of be, again, how our product is broken, right? The service fabric. So we, as Paul will talk about, integration of the service chaining of security with Checkpoint and Versa as the VNF. That's this particular slide that's referring to, right? And we operate on a white box, right, on an x86 server. It could also go very well in a public cloud. It could be an AWS or an Azure, or it could be a bare metal that could be sitting in via the VMs in OpenStack or VMware, provided by VMware. So the three different components on the right that Versa software is really made up of, it's the director, it's the SD-WAN controller, and the analytics. The director is what basically is responsible for management of the configuration. The controller is nothing but a route reflector. That's the second component. And the analytics is basically giving you all application performance management. So in the analytics, you have monitoring, which basically is real time, and analytics, which is historical.
So, Heman, quick question for you.
Sure.
Looking at this, then being that Versa is software and also can run on an appliance, that will improve your connectivity to your, let's say, your applications and connection into your cloud?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So basically, what helps in the connectivity is our ability to sort of determine which path to take and which is the most optimized path that we can take at the time when let's say when there is a degradation on the circuit. So yes, it will allow our solution allows the customers to take the most optimal path based on which is at that given time.
Oh, great! Thank you.
Yep, you bet. Next slide. So very quickly, knowing that I just want to quickly kind of give you an overview on some of the feature and functionality. And I'm not going to read this because this is kind of an eye chart, but bottom line, Versa is a carrier class routing capability, right? So we are the leaders when it comes to the routing capability, although Cisco and Juniper have been doing it for years. But when it comes to certain features, functionality, such as forward error correction or packet stripping or packet duplication, MOS-based scoring, right? So when you have a real-time application where you do a voice and video, we actually do a MOS-based scoring, which is really differentiates us from the other SD-WAN vendors. Again, there are several. You can look at and this will be distributed by the Teneo group, but you can review it at leisure at a later time. From an SD-WAN capability, again, we do the underlay, which is routing, and overlay, which is SD-WAN, right? And we do this pretty much as good or better than any of the other SD-WAN vendors that are out there that focuses only on SD-WAN, right? But we have all the features, functionality, and the capability in SD-WAN, which is right here listed in the slide. And then the third area is security. Again, this is all integrated with Checkpoint as the security partner, and that's where Paul is going to review very quickly on how that integration is beneficial to you as the enterprise, with combining with SD-WAN and security from Checkpoint.
All right, Heman, thank you very much for the quick recap and the details on the Versa solution. Paul, I'm going to hand the controls over to you to help this start a discussion about integrating the Checkpoint product into the SD-WAN solution.
Okay. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is, and I talk really fast, so I'm going to try to go slow. And as luck would have it, there's construction going off right outside my office. So if you hear something in the background, that's what it is. But what I'm going to do is try to recap what we talked about at CPX when I probably met most of you guys, and then go into a little bit higher level detail of how we're integrating Checkpoint and Versa, and then hopefully spend most of the time just doing Q&A. So if I could recap, when I talk to people about SD-WAN, I like to use the analogy, if you're not on SD-WAN in 3 to 5 years from now, you're going to be a yellow cab in an Uber world. And the analogy is not like yellow cab is terrible or it's a bad idea. It provides a good service, right? But Uber provides a better service. And with Uber, you could pick your car, you could watch it come on a map, you could rate your driver, payments are automatic, et cetera, et cetera. So similar to how Uber provides a better service, so too does SD-WAN versus traditional routers. SD-WAN creates efficiencies, reduces cost, it increases performance, and automates a lot of the tasks that very experienced network engineers would take a long time to do. And so you probably already know that the business or the network team is the driver of SD-WAN, and you know they're pushing it hard. The business is thinking of efficiencies such as how could I get my employees to be more efficient, more productive, and how could I save money? Some of the ways are reducing, expensive MPLS, like Hemant mentioned. Get rid of internet traffic at the closest, cheapest egress point. Reduce complexity, improve performance, improve redundancy. So reducing costs, decreasing complexity, increasing performance, redundancy. Like, where's the downside to this, right? I mean, there's nothing but upside potential. The only problem is security, right? So what do you do about security? So if you have 25 tail sites, right, today with 2 data centers, likely your security is all controlled in 2 locations. So although you have 27 sites, you only have to worry about 2. And so what do you do when you have to control 27 sites? That's why worried. That's what the challenge is. So there's a couple of options that we see in the field on a day-to-day basis, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit and maybe some of the pros and cons. The first and probably most widely accepted is just bolt-on security. And that makes sense because it's how we've done things in the past in the security industry forever. We just bolt it on, right? We put a firewall in front of or behind the SD-WAN appliance, and we secure it from a layer 3 port perspective. But what are the problems in doing it this fashion? So we introduced another point of failure. Complexity is definitely increased. When you have 2 devices that are competing, one wants to do security and one wants to connect everything, they're going to butt heads. So that's some of the problems that we see by just bolting on another box. Another thing I see quite often is instead of putting a security device in front of or behind, they use the cloud for security. And one of the companies I run into the most is Zscaler. There's a couple others, but Zscaler in particular. So why not do that? Why not just use the cloud? It's perfectly valid, but when you're talking about hundreds or thousands of users, it starts to get really expensive. And additionally, what I see personally from pure security perspective is Zscaler was absolutely the first one to market. They're the industry leader. They have the biggest user base. There's no doubt about that. But what I haven't seen is any third-party validation from them. I don't know what their efficacy rate is. I don't know, how many things they catch versus how many things they don't catch. What I do know is the last time I checked, Zscaler had about 130,000 protections, and versus Checkpoint's Threat Cloud, which does nothing but security, has 35 million. Last time I checked, Zscaler had about 230 apps and about 100 categories. Checkpoint has 8,000 and 170 categories. Like I said, Zscaler was never tested against a third party. Checkpoint gets NSS Labs' highest recommended category when it's tested. So those are some of the issues that I see about bolting on. And I could go on about Zscaler like I mentioned, because they are the industry leader and they are the default choice from what I see, but I don't know necessarily if it's the best choice. And so even if you do end up going with the product that is not Versa, I totally recommend you look at the Checkpoint NSAS product. It has some of the best security on the market. So the other option is you could live with whatever the SD-WAN provider gives you, and some are better than others. There's no doubt about that. But the only difference between that is it's integrated and it's not bolted on. But you still need another skill set to manage it. You have to look at multiple places when an incident occurs. You need a second set of reporting or alerting tools. And even if you have all that, you have to look at twice as many reports because now you have two different things doing security. However, in my opinion, though, you're probably safe to assume if you bolt on or go with the built-in, you're probably at a disadvantage from a pure security play perspective. And the other thing is integrate, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So since the network team is driving this, and it's either the business or the networking team, what I can tell you is if you could get in front of it and steer them towards SD-WAN with Versa, you could seamlessly extend your security fabric into the SD-WAN appliance without blinking an eye. At very least, what I recommend is have some input into the decision and try to drive security. Same reports, same logs, same engineering skills, the same everything. You already have it. It's not a matter of having to do something. So if it's a smaller site, what you could do is you could take advantage of the cheap NSAS product that I was talking about. You pay per seat, and this option gives you maximum flexibility. But once again, it's the same security, right? So it makes complete sense to go with the cloud license for 5 users versus maybe VSec for 50. And if you have that larger site, secure it with VSec running on the Versa. But the bottom line is with Versa, you have the ability to have the same best security everywhere. And you also take advantage of what SD-WAN has to offer. You have the same logs, like I said, the same reports, same alerts, same engineering, security that's already built in. It's already running in your environment. There's nothing new to learn, nothing new to design. So, and then of course you could deploy a Checkpoint appliance, but once again, that's a bolt-on like we discussed.
Hey, Paul, I got a quick question in here.
Okay.
Is the VSec stuff the CloudGuard pieces that was mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, so VSec's the older product, older name?
No. So VSec is basically, it's the software firewall. CloudGuard is the internet firewall. So VSec is software that runs on Versa. CloudGuard is Checkpoint's network security as a service. CloudGuard is basically a marketing term. So they have CloudGuard SaaS, CloudGuard IaaS, CloudGuard NSAS, but CloudGuard is Checkpoint's cloud product. The NSAS is specifically what I'm talking about, where it's firewall in a cloud, full threat prevention in a cloud.
And that's where they're just routing the traffic to their cloud?
Correct. We either set up a GRE or an IPsec tunnel.
So in the perspective of SD-WAN, the SD-WAN Versa box could, at a smaller site, just create basically a VPN tunnel to the NSAS Checkpoint cloud, and all your threat prevention would be done in the cloud.
Not only that, but that's definitely true. But what you get with NSAS, Checkpoint's NSAS versus Blue Coat or Symantec or a Zscaler is it's a full-blown firewall. You could actually do port filtering as well. I don't think you could do that. I know with Zscaler you have to proxy stuff, and proxies can be bypassed. And you could put an ACL on your router for everything else, but that's how we secured routers 25 years ago. So it seems like you take a step forward and 3 steps back.
Okay, I'll be quiet and let you keep going.
Okay. So this is more of a marketing slide. Basically, all this means is that Teneo. I can't really speak for Checkpoint or for Versa. I know they're now talking and working together on this technology. Teneo has worked with Versa development and Checkpoint development engineers to integrate this. So we were sort of So even if / when this is a product, we're going to be months and months, if not years, ahead of the competition in terms of know-how. This is just a quick use case, and I'm not going to dwell on this because I only have 15 minutes. But one of the recent ones that we just did, we just reduced a healthcare facility in the Mid-Atlantic. They were paying about $1.5 million over 3 years. We got them down to under $500,000 for 3 years. They're no longer reliant on MPLS. They have more data. They have more bandwidth, more visibility. And so this is why the business is pushing SD-WAN. So what does it look like to integrate? This is a very simple representation of a larger site. This is a bigger picture of the Versa architecture and how it connects to a simple but larger site, right? So it has external connection. You can see that at the upper left. It has the internal connection on the lower left. And then it's connected to the Versa director. And the Versa director could be controlled from our head end if you want us to manage it. It could be controlled from your head end if you want to manage it. It could be in AWS in the cloud. It could be in your data center. It's very flexible. Okay, so highlighted in orange here is basically the virtual pieces of the appliance itself. Various VRs are what connect the different networks together. And then you see the checkpoint firewall on the lower right that sits in a KVM that's spun up on the Versa. So that's the VSec software that we were just talking about. And then there's a VR that connects the virtual router. Connects the VSec to the management system that sits on your network today. But the major takeaway here is since it's on a KVM, it never leaves the appliance. When the traffic gets to the SD-WAN appliance, it's determined by policy. You know, if it needs to send the traffic to the checkpoint, if it does so, but it does so in a service chain fashion. So it's not going out through layer 3 through a wire. It's on the same box. Versa passes it to checkpoint. Checkpoint gives it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If it gives it a thumbs up, it sends it back to Versa, and Versa sends it on its way. So the point here is a single box solution like Hemant was talking about, but Versa does what it does best, and Checkpoint does what it does best. It never has to leave the box, and that's key.
Hey, so on that note, a question just popped up about the performance of Checkpoint running on the Versa box. Okay. So can you address VSec running on it and the performance of the whole?
Sure, absolutely. So like there's no specific data metrics that we could give for VSec because it's all dependent on, you know, what kind of hard disk, what kind of RAM, and what kind of cores, what kind of, you know, sockets you're using. But from the testing we've done, it's just like any open server, right? If you buy better CPU and, you know, solid state disk and you give it more RAM, you're going to get better performance. So some of the Versa boxes that, you know, if you want to go super high end, I think you may end up spending a whopping $5,000. And this is very specific to customer sites and what their needs are. So I don't want to say, oh, it's $5,000. But for $5,000, you could get a super speedy Versa box and have plenty of horsepower left over for Checkpoint. But that's something we would want to talk to you individually about. So if you could just ping Craig, and, you know, we could certainly follow up with you more in order to better understand, you know, how many people, how many sites, that kind of thing. We can certainly make recommendations there. So
another actually pretty technical question just popped up. On a typical firewall, you'll end up doing NATs. Mm-hmm. And the question here said, can you do inbound NATs if you run VSec on Versa?
Sure, of course. You absolutely can. Once again, would that be the best way to do it? I'm not 100% sure. I would want to know bigger picture questions. I would think most of the sites we're talking about are tails at the core. We might want to do something different, but once again, it all depends on your particular setup. And my hope for this is that we could address these questions like that in a general sense, and then you know, we could follow up with you individually to talk about your specific needs. It wouldn't make much sense to talk about one person's specific needs and everybody else is just hanging on the line. If you want to talk about your specific environment, I would love to have that follow up. But we should do it, one-on-one, so we could focus on you and not waste everybody else's time.
Perfect.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, another one?
Yeah, actually, I have two that are kind of tied together.
Okay.
And it has to do with management of the VSEC incidences. So basically, I'm going to just sort of shorten it a little bit, is how do you manage those VSEC instances? And then on the follow-up on that is, where do the logs go? Are they visible? Since could be sitting in the cloud or somewhere else, where can the logs be visible in the Checkpoint log server or Smart Event in itself?
Sure. So how do you manage it? Let's take that one first. You manage it like any other gateway. If you didn't know this was running on a Versa, you would think it's an appliance. So you manage it from your management center just like you manage any other gateway. There's absolutely no difference. You have no idea unless you installed it. So it's exactly the same. And then can you get logs in? Obviously, if you're managing the firewall, you can get logs in, right? But I think what you are asking is from the NSAS, could you get the logs? And so the answer is yes. It's a manual process today, but one that we've done many times, and soon it'll be a click box. But yes, today you could get the logs. They could come down into your log server and go into your Smart Event. Ultimately, you're going to be able to control the cloud gateways from your Smart Dashboard as well. Today is through a web UI, but yes, we can certainly integrate logging.
Okay, one more question, and then I'll let you get back on the roll.
Okay. Cool.
In SD-WAN, we saw it in part of Hemon's presentation, talked about collapsing the stack or being able to pull multiple devices into a single device. Can you, the reason I'm asking that question now is because of the screen that you have up.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what do you mean by collapsing the stack? What type of devices in your network closet can be combined into one to help efficient?
Well, sure. So once again, it depends on your environment and what devices you have. But let's say you have a router, right? So we could absolutely replace your router. Let's say you have some kind of IPS device. We could absolutely replace your IPS device. Maybe you have some web sensor or some other third-party URL filter. So we could absolutely combine that in. So all of the security functions, all of the routing functions, all of the advanced SD-WAN functions could literally be replaced with one box with this solution.
Perfect. I'll let you go back to work.
Okay, so I'm almost done here. I don't have too much more. I do want to show you an example, and I guess I didn't finish this slide, but meant to put a logo on there. But so basically, this is an example of 3 small branches we have secured with Checkpoint's NSAS. Very simple setup, a WAN and a LAN. Each LAN has, in this particular real world use case, has 15 or less users, 1 server. We set up a pair of, in this case, it was GRE tunnels, but we could certainly do IPsec tunnels redundant to the NSAS. So your redundancy is covered. And then obviously, NSAS covers you from threats, but you also have the app and URL filtering. And NSAS is also a firewall, which is one of the key differentiators. Anytime Checkpoint comes to the party, they're usually late, but when they get there, they're probably one of the best. And I don't think any of the other cloud offerings really have a way to do a full-blown 65,535 ports firewall in the cloud, along with all of the threat and URL and app and SSL inspection and all of that. So I don't think, I know Zscaler, if you can't proxy to it, it can't go there. And once again, I said you can put ACL on your router to make sure some ports are blocked, but you want to talk about looking at logs and trying to manage that, that's a hot mess. So with Checkpoint, everything is directed through the cloud. So in the big picture, this is, just combining the past couple of slides, and we see, 3 sites, small. They're the ones we were just looking at. They have Versa on site to do all the SD-WAN. They have multiple connections, and they're 100% secured by CloudGuard. And that says SaaS, but it should say NSAS. And then on the lower right-hander, there are 2 main sites with more users. That's where their business headquarters are, maybe a larger branch office. And what they're doing is they're running the Versa with VSEC on board on the KVM. managed by their existing, smart architecture, and that's how that's going. So all the logs are rolling back to their log server. Everything's completely searchable in Smart Log, and completely reportable in Smart Event. And so this is another marketing slide. I'm not going to go into this, but that's it for me. I guess from the 10,000 foot view, that's the architecture that we designed. Like I said, and sort of like I was answering the questions, there's many different options based on specific network configurations and specific customer needs. However, this is the baseline that we would likely build. This is where we would start. So hopefully this was meant to recall our conversation at CPX and spark any specific questions. And if there's any more, I'll be happy to take them. And, if there's more specific ones we could follow up with, I'd be happy to do that as well. So is there anything else, Craig, or did you ask as we were going?
I asked all of them as we went through. Let me see if I missed anything, because there was one about Zscaler, and you answered that. The inbound NAT and Smart Event. So it looks like we've got the questions. Actually, one just popped in about scalability, and this resides to another question I had from the initial webinar. If you have redundant links, will the Versa solution work in a highly available environment like active or active passive?
Sure. Good question. Absolutely. And
I can answer that if you like.
Go ahead. And what I'll tell you is I'll let Hemant answer, but unlike Checkpoint, where it's less complicated and easier to run HA, it actually runs an active better on Versa. So go ahead, Hemant. I won't steal your thunder.
No, that's okay. So basically the answer to the question is yes, we absolutely can do active or active passive at the branch with the appliance. So most enterprises today, given that they have a hybrid network where one connection will be an MPLS, and the other connection could be a broadband / could be an LTE, could be an internet connection. Most of them, given the need for redundancy and high availability, they deploy 2 devices or 2 appliances at the branch, and our software will basically accommodate the high availability through VRRP. So the answer to the question is yes.
So just one follow-up on that. Is there any limits? The question came back as scalable, and it said 100 sites. Is there any limits to how far you can scale these out? And your customer sizes, are they small, 5 sites, or large, thousands of sites?
Thousands of sites.
So there is, so there is no, so from a Versa standpoint, right, we can go, the limitation is more at the director level, right, which is sitting at, which is basically doing the management control. And we can scale all the way from 1 site, 2 sites, all the way up to 3,500 sites on one director, right? And if the enterprise, let's say in the case where they have actually 5,000 sites, right, then we would basically have a federation of director that will be dedicated to that particular enterprise. So the answer is, we can scale all the way up to 3,500 devices on our one director.
And I'll just follow on to that and say, if you have 5,000 sites, we'll throw the federation configuration in for free.
There you go. That's all the questions. So I want to thank everyone for their interest in Secure SD-WAN. My name's Craig Johnson. I'm the Business Development Manager at Teneo Group. As a reminder, this was the second in the series of webinars on Secure SD-WAN. Next week, we'll go even deeper into integration. Also, as a reminder, we were recording this webinar today, and it'll be made available soon, along with the frequently asked questions and along with the SD-WAN 101 webinar from last week. So thank you very much for joining today. And remember, at the Teneo Group, we exist to secure your network.
Thank you.
See you, Craig.